All right, so people are always talking about building web apps, new frameworks, shiny tools, and fast deployment setups, right? But there's not a whole lot of discussions around testing those applications. In this video, I want to go over a tool that I've been playing around with for the last couple of weeks now. And honestly, I was blown away by how seamless it is at catching bugs and issues before they even reach production. So the tool is called Test Sprite, and it completely changes how you approach testing. So you're shipping broken code because testing is an afterthought. So there's late night chasing bugs and patching things to production, and that awful moment when users spot the issue before you do. So yeah, we've been all there, right? A lot of devs treat testing like homework, something that they'll get to later, and they'll run a few manual checks right before they release production, or throw away together a quick scripts that breaks all the time. But it doesn't have to be like that, right? So let me show you how TestSprite actually fits into a real workflow and how to generate tests fast and run them automatically. So it actually plugs everything right into your CI so you can catch issues at commit rather than in production. So with that out of the way, let me show a quick demo for a project that I created. So it's completely brand new. So you can see how everything works as far as TestSprite and how it easily can generate a test suite based on the PRD document that you upload. So I'm going to show you how everything works and show you the PRD that I created for this project. So let me run through the quick overview of what TestSprite does. So you can see here the homepage. This tool is built for modern coders, the agent that tests, fixes, and validates your software. So not only do you create the tests, but it also validates and fix your software, right? So it accompanies the tools that you already use, such as Windsurf, Cursor, or Claude if you use any of those tools. You can incorporate as part of your workflow so you can build with the app and build the features that you need for your project. And you use TestSprite to build the tests and also to actually fix those issues that it found. And it validates your software for any vulnerabilities or any security issues that it found. Right, so you see here that you can try the MCP for free. And if you go to the pricing, you can see here that they have a free tier that will give you 150 credits per month, which is enough to run through and create some tests for your project initially. And then it includes foundational models that you can use to create the tests. It contains the basic testing features and also includes the community support. So it gives you enough to get started. But if you want to actually start incorporating to your projects, they have a limited time free plan that you can use, since you're going to get the first month discount and you're not going to be paying anything, and then be $19 for the second month, and so on and so forth. So this is great as you get 400 credits per month and you get more advanced models as part of your plan, right? So you have optimized execution and you have priority support. But let's go ahead and try it out and sign in into TestSprite so you can see how it works. So once you log into TestSprite, you can see here off the bat that all the different tests that I have. So currently I only have one project here that I created a test suite for. And you can see the number of the passing tests versus how many overall tests it created. So you can see here which one failed and which one passed based on the status, and also the type, whether it's a front-end or back-end type of test. Basically, you're going to be able to iterate through this and make sure it passes first. And then after that, you can be able to deploy it into actual production. So the MCP server here allows us to interact with our local environment so that we can test out the project within our local environment. Then once we're happy with everything and everything passes, then we can deploy it to the production or staging environment to actually perform the tests in those environments. So in the MCP test is where you see all the different MCP server tests. The next one I want to show you guys is where to generate the API keys. So in order to connect to the MCP server, you're going to have to install it in the tool. It'll give you some installation guide here on how to install it into your local environment, whether you're using Windsurf, Claude, or Cursor, or any of those other tools. First thing that you need to do is you need to generate an API key. And there's some instruction here on how to add it into your local tools, such as Cursor. They have a built-in integration with Cursor, which allows you to just click on this button right here, add the cursor. Or if you want to add it to Claude, you can see here that there's a command here that you can run, and then you just have to enter your API key. For the other tools that doesn't support this easy configuration, you can just plug it into your configuration based on this value. So you can see that you can create a test sprite object, which contains the command of npx. It's going to be using the npx to be able to interact with the MCP server. And it's using the arguments of this package, right? And then we're passing in the environment API key. And then this is where you're going to be plugging in the API key. So before you can even plug into your tool, you're going to have to create a key and click on this button, which is going to open up a new tab. So you can create a new API key and just name it however you want, test, and then create. So once you get the API key, you can return back and just paste it and just put it into your notepad first before plugging it into your IDE. So that's how easy it is. And then creating tests with TestSprite, once you have connected to their MCP server, you can just say, hey, help me test this project with TestSprite. So we're going to go through this and set this up in a minute. So yeah, that's how easy it is to plug it into your tools. So let me go ahead and take you to the installation process first of installing the test MCP. So we're not going to be using Cursor, but we're going to be using Claude Code. Or actually, I'm going to show you how it works first inside of Windsurf. So if you go to Windsurf here, you see here that I can toggle the cascade by clicking this button on the top. And then from here on the top right, you can see that there's this like little plug that you can click on. So you can click on that and you can see all the different MCPs that's installed on my Windsurf IDE. So you're going to click on the MCP marketplace. So from here, you can be able to see all the different installed MCPs. For some reason, it's not loading, but you can be able to go to settings. Don't mind my API key. I'm going to be deleting my API keys later on. But basically, you're going to be including this MCP servers. And then inside of that will be the different test MCP servers that you have available. So the only thing that I have here is TestSprite at the moment. And this matches the object that is currently in their website. So you can define the TestSprite and includes the command, the arg, and the environment, which includes your API key. So it matches what they have in their interface. So that's how easy it is to install. You might have to restart your IDE after you install the MCP server in order for Windsurf or Cursor or any of the tools to detect the MCP server. The next thing I want to show you guys is how to install it inside of Claude Code. So it's pretty easy. It's through the command line. So you go back into the website and switch to Claude Code. So you can see here that there's a command here that you can execute inside of the command line that allows you to install the MCP for TestSprite. So I usually like going and pasting it into Notepad first before creating it anywhere else. So I'm going to go ahead and just paste it here in my Notepad++. You can see here that the command is here. And we're going to go ahead and create a new key. So let's create a new key and let's say TestSprite. That's going to be the name of the key. Doesn't really matter what the name is. And we're just going to go ahead and copy the key and then go back into my Notepad here. And then we're just going to go ahead and paste where your API key here. And we're just going to go ahead and just paste that long string. So we're going to go ahead and copy this whole thing. And we're going to go back into Windsurf. So Claude Code, it's, you can run it in command line, but there's an extension that you can install inside of Windsurf. If you can go to the extensions side, you can see here that I have the Claude Code for VS Code installed. So if you don't have that installed, it's a nice handy tool that you can install inside of Cursor or Windsurf. So any VS Code compatible type of IDE, you can install it. So once you have it here, you can enable Claude Code through the terminal, or you can allow it inside of this sidebar right here. So let's go ahead and create a new terminal here, Control-Shift-P, and then let's just go ahead and do a git bash. So I can execute the command that we generate so we can install the MCP on our Claude Code environment. So currently it doesn't have anything yet. So if I do run a Claude here inside of this project and I do an MCP, I don't have anything configured here. So we're going to go ahead and exit real quick. And then we're just going to go ahead and paste the installation for MCP server, which is Claude MCP add TestSprite, and then pass in the argument for an environment and then API key. And then we're just going to go ahead and hit enter. All right, so we have to make sure that we remove some spaces in the commands and then hit enter again. And this will allow you to add the MCP server, the stdio MCP server TestSprite with the command of this. So you have to restart your Claude if you have it started somewhere else. So we're going to go ahead and start Claude here and verify that the MCP server is actually installed. So we're going to go and run m/mcp. And you can see here that it's connected. You can see here that you can hit enter. So you can see more details about it and view the different tools that's currently available for that. So currently TestSprite has 7 tools that you can use. So there's a bootstrap test, there's a generate code summary, generate standardized PRD, generate front-end test, and then generate back-end test plan. So that's how easy it is to install the MCP server for TestSprite into your tool, such as your Claude Code or Windsurf. All right, so before we have TestSprite generate the test suite for this project, I just want to go and show you the PRD document, which is pretty vital in terms of generating the test. This is also vital when generating the project itself, since it includes everything that we need, such as the front end, the tech stacks for the front end, the back end database. We're using Next.js 16 with App Router, and then Next.js API routes. For the database, we're using the Neon database, which is basically a serverless Postgres. And then authentication is being done using NextAuth JS v4, and then validation is Zod for the front end. Make sure that there's a strong type in our types. And also we're using Tailwind, which doesn't really matter. It's all for styling at this point. And then we're going to go and deploy it to Vercel. Right, so here's the key features. I'm going to go ahead and do a split view here so you can see the entire project. So you can see that the project includes all different things that we need for the project, such as what the app is about, which is a budget optimization. This is basically to build and budget your application. It will use AI to create the budgets for you, but this is pretty simple and basic for now. We just want to make sure and run the test first, since we've generated the initial version 1 of the project. So it includes the user authentication data, the database schema for the users, the different endpoints for the API, and also different features such as transaction management, what the types of features are included in that particular feature, and also the database schema and how it's being generated. So it's a basic, simple app for now. I'm just going to go ahead and show you the Neon database first. I was able to generate 5 different tables. The budget has categories, receipts, and transactions, and only have a single user. I was able to create a user for this just for the sake of testing the application. But you can see here that it's a fresh application. It doesn't have any budget. It doesn't have any categories or receipts or any transactions. So we're going to go ahead and run this application. We're going to do an npm I to install any dependencies. And then we're going to go ahead and run dev here. So we're just going to go and run it so you can see and have a feel of what the project is. We're going to go ahead and go to the app here. We're going to go to localhost 3000. Yeah, it should be up and running now. So I'm already logged in here. So I'm going to go ahead and sign out. You can see that everything is working as expected. We're going to go ahead and do a login here. And this is the interface. I haven't really created transactions here. So there's a button here to create transactions. And there's like a area where you can create budgets. You can scan receipts later on. So this is a feature that I'll probably going to be adding later on, scan receipts and automatically add it into the transactions. There's also a settings section here, and then some editing of the settings, which is a feature that we're going to be adding. So let's go ahead and test this out. So if you go back into Windsurf, I can open up Claude Code here. And then actually let's go back into TestSprite. And then in order to create, once we have MCPs connected in our tool, we can now generate the test. And here's the sentence that you can type into your code editor in order to tap into the MCP server tool, right? So we're going to go ahead and copy this, and let's just go back into Claude Code, right? So like I said before, the PRD is a pretty important piece of document that TestSprite is going to require in order to generate the test. So let's go ahead and paste that command here, and then just have Claude Code detect the tool and use it. All right, so you can see here, I'll help you test this project with TestSprite. Let me first examine the project structure and then set up the testing. So Claude Code is able to communicate to TestSprite through the MCP tool and tap into the MCP server, and then go here and generate the code summary. So it's going to generate the code summary here. Now it's going to go to do that Claude Code generated. All right, so it's slowly generating some files here. So the first thing that it generated is the code summary, .json. And then the next thing here is going to have to write to this file right here and include it as part of the project. So I created a temporary file first, and then it's going to go ahead and create that file within the project. So yes, and don't ask again. All right, so the next thing, it wants to generate a standardized PRD for its own documentation so it can create the test suite based on that internal knowledge. So go ahead and accept and say yes to generate that PRD document. And then it's going to write its own PRD file within that PRD. And then we're going to go ahead and hit yes. It's going to go ahead and generate a standardized PRD. All right, so it's gonna go ahead and bootstrap the test here. It's gonna run it inside of this local port for this front end. So you're gonna expand on this one. So you can see that it's gonna bootstrap the test input tool. We're just gonna go ahead and allow it. And this is gonna open up a page here, right? So it's inside of this localhost 59758, basically to initialize and bootstrap the TestSprite suite so it can generate some tests. So it's going to open up a page that looks like this. So we're going to go ahead and switch to front end. That's what we want to focus on for this particular demo. And then we're also going to be focusing on the scope of code base. And then for this one, we're going to be typing in the username. We're going to be typing in the account that we have created inside of this. And we're going to be typing in the password so that it can actually use that account. And then everything else seems to be okay. The localhost 3000 port, and then the path, we're just going to go ahead and just use the root path here. And then for this one, we're just going to go ahead and use the PRD that we have talked about earlier. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and drag the PRD.markdown file. And then as you can see here, that's been uploaded into this page. And we're just going to go ahead and hit continue and then upload successfully. This page will close automatically. And then let's go back into Windsurf so you can finish up the plan. So click on hit yes. So it's currently on the generate a test plan as part of the to-do list that it's created. So it's now generating the test plan. So you can even peek here. It's under this TestSprite_test. So inside of the project root directory, it generated that folder. And then from there, there's some temp files and then also some configuration. And it created this standardized PRD JSON file that's able to determine and use later on when it's generating the test suite. So it's currently creating the front-end test plan for our project. So as you can see, as it goes through the to-do list, it's able to run the various tools within the MCP that's installed on the Claude code. Yes, and don't ask again. So it's executing test generation. I'm going to go ahead and close some of these. And this is the command that it's executing. So it's executing this command and also is running this generate code and execute. All right, so the tests are currently running. So I'm just going to go ahead and switch back into the TestSprite website here and then let's close this out and let's go back into the MCP test. So it generated some tests here and disrupted it a little bit, but here's the new one that it's currently running. So let's go ahead and expand on this one. So as you can see here, 2 out of 20 passes. So it's generated 20 tests so far. And so far, 2 out of 20 pass. And everything else is either failed or in progress. So if you check out the one that has failed, we can examine this by clicking on the actual test. And we'll give you like a video preview of what it actually did during that test. So we're going to go ahead and play this back. And then it's able to create an account. You see here that it's trying to sign up. User with this email already existed. This one has failed due to persistent duplicate emails despite using unique variation. So there's probably an issue with the actual database record here. Let's go ahead and check this out. So it's probably just reusing the same email that's already been created. So I kind of messed it up by stopping and resuming, creating a new test for it. But it encountered an error nonetheless. And then let's go ahead and check out the other one. So there's 4 out of 20 that has passed. So now it looks like it has completed. Let's go and take a look at the one that has passed. So this one passed. It was able to sign in using the username and password that I created or that I gave it earlier. And let's go ahead and check out the other ones that failed. Invalid email and weak password. So that's partially succeeded. Invalid email format trigger a clear. However, password validation error message could not be verified because the form block submission with an existing user email error. So it was not able to fully validate the test because of some other errors that it encountered. So unauthorized API access, it was able to pass this specific test. It was able to get an authorized error for an API test. Okay, so let's go back here. Yes, and don't ask again. So the tests have completed successfully. And then now let me read the raw test report and generate the final formatted report. So it's going to go ahead and read the raw report that I generated. So everything is here. You can see that everything's underneath the TestSprite_test. And every single test that I generated is included here. Everything's in Python. It's using Playwright library to generate the actual test to run through the website. So there's different test for each individual ones that you can run and re-execute. And then there's a standard PRD that we mentioned earlier. And then there's the various front end test plan that is generated as well. You can see that there's various ID here, user login, and all that stuff. Let's go back into Claude Code here. So it's still generating it. All right, so once it's completed, you can see here that it created a test result summary. You can see here that it's the same thing that we saw in the TestSprite website. Is we have a test, 4 tests passing, and then there's critical issues that were found that we're probably going to be taking a look at and fix. And there's high priority issues such as transactional forms, not interactive, budget forms, not interactive, and then there's some chunk loading failures that we should take a look at. This is very detailed here, as you can see. One thing that I want to do is I want to run through and redo some of the tests since it failed based on some database records. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this record right here that it created. I'm going to delete that record. And I want to have it actually run through some existing tests. So there's some documentation that they have here. There's a prompt, help me run a 1, 3, and 12 tests using TestSprite, generate code, and execute. So we're just gonna go ahead and copy that and then go back into our test here. And then the main thing here that I wanna do is I wanna run through and do the first one. I wanna rerun this test right here to ensure that actually is failing. So I'm gonna go ahead and copy that prompt here. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and just remove the 1, 3, and 12 and just help me rerun the first run. Yeah, the one test using first test using TestSprite, generate code, and execute. So let's go ahead and do that. You can see that it's reading the first test, which is the user registration. We're going to go ahead and hit yes here. And I just want to run through that test, making sure that it's not a glitch because of an existing email registration issue. So if you go back into the website, you can see here that it created a batch of tests here. So it's going through the first test. You can see here that it's currently in progress just for that one that we specified, since we just want to run that one single test for now. I'm just curious to know whether it failed because of an actual issue or whether there was just a racing condition that was happening there. So I'm just going to go ahead and let it run and let it complete. All right, so when we run the first test from initial run, it actually passed. You can see here, it actually finished and it's able to register a new account. If we go back into our Neon database here, I can refresh this. And you can see here that it's able to generate another account, right? So it's able to test, and then it has this video right here, and it kind of goes through the registration process. And going back into Claude Code here, and if I go back, switch to Claude Code here, you can see here that it was able to actually test this TC001 now has passed. And let me read the updated raw report and generate a summary. So it created a summary for us. So now it's saying that it's now, instead of an error, it's able to pass that test now. It gives us a breakdown of what actually happened and what passed. And also there's a link right here which takes you straight to the recording of the test inside of TestSprite, and then what it went through. And then there's some recommendation here, such as now that T001 now has passed, T00112 failed initial run, I recommend a rerun TC012 since it's sort of correlated to the initial test that failed. Maybe it failed because of the first test failing. So we can go ahead and rerun the test here, and you can just say, I want to rerun the TC12 test, and then TC004, 002, and TC004 as well. It's going to go ahead and execute those commands to rerun those tests associated with the first test that potentially it could be good now, right? So let's go back into the MCP test here. So you can see that it's created 3 brand new tests again, since we specified 2, 4, and 12 to rerun those tests again. So it's currently those tests are in progress now. So we're going to go ahead and just wait till those finishes. All right, so the test is still running for those 3 tests that we just ran. So you can see here that 1 has failed, 1 has passed, and 1 is still in progress. So the incorrect credentials is still failing, and then the retrieved default categories is now working. So it was previously failing and now it's working. So it's going to go ahead and fill out some registration here. It's going to go ahead and log in, and then it's going to go and retrieve the categories, I guess. Okay, so it's able to retrieve the default category. So it's going through and checking out the API, which is kind of cool. So we're just waiting for the last one to, okay, looks like the first one also has succeeded and it's also passed. So now I'm checking out what we have here so far and going back into Claude Code. So now, excellent, the tests have completed. Let me read the full report and provide you with a detailed summary. So here's what it generated. So 2 passing now. It's giving you, it's kind of like a breakdown of what has occurred. Let me go ahead and flip back into the test sprite here. You can see the credits remaining here. We started with approximately about 80 something or 90 credits. Now have 62. So it's able to use up about 20 credits in that time span, which is not too bad. So it's kind of giving me some recommendation here on what to do. So next thing I want to do here is probably fix some of these issues. We're just going to go ahead and just pick one and have it fixed so we can kind of see it in action. Let's go ahead and fix it and then have the test rerun again and see it in action. So we're going to go ahead and just fix one of these. So actually, let me go ahead and just this one. So the invalid email and weak password has password ID, which is good. Let me go ahead and just pick one that's still failing. Some of these is probably like, so let's fix the create transaction, which is this one right here. Let's just go ahead and just fix this one and have Claude Code fix it. So we're going to go back into Claude Code here and let's fix. And then I'm just going to go ahead and see if I can TC 006 create income transaction and let's fix it. Okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and run this and see if we can actually fix this issue and then rerun the test later on again. All right, so Claude Code is still trying to fix the issue. I can see that test code for TC006 is trying to create an income transaction but failing because the form fields are not interactive. So it's going to go through and, oh, it's actually trying to run the test sprite, generate code and execute as well. Let me just go ahead and hit yes here and just rerun that test. So rerun TC006. So it's kind of cool because once you fix the actual issue, it's going to go ahead and retry. Since it's associated with a test sprite, it's going to go ahead and rerun the test automatically and do it. So let's go ahead and just allow it to continue and do that. And let's go back into the test sprite website here and go back into MCP test. So you can see here that it's still, there's a new test that's currently running in progress. Let's go ahead and go back to it once it's completed. I think we found the issue. So when I click on the transaction here in add transaction, before it was just showing the gray page, it's not showing any modal. So I think that was the issue. So I iterated into Claude Code that's actually the issue. That's why the test has been failing. So it went ahead and fixed it. It says that it found the issue, right? And then it says right here, that's a real issue. The modal is showing, but only displaying a gray overlay. So this is a Z index or a re-rendering issue. So I went ahead and fixed it and perfect. I fixed the modal by adding the relative and Z10 classes to the form container. And then it tried and asked me to rerun that test again, right? So for that particular test. So it should be running now if you go back into our MCP test here. So it's currently in progress. And if we go navigate to the actual website, I'm able to actually see the form, which is a good news. So let's go ahead and just wait for it to finish completing the test, and then we can come back and evaluate the test results. All right, so it looks like the test has completed and we've fixed some of the issues here, but we're getting close to actually fixing it. So you can see here that it's still failing, but it's able to give us some suggestion on what else is broken in the test. So the test logic missing change type to income first is now fully functional. The only issue is, okay, let's go ahead and let's fix the remaining in the TC06 test. Let's go ahead and run that. You see it's able to read the previous response from the test sprite, and then it's able to actually fix that test. So let's go ahead and see the actual test here. It's actually a pretty long test. So we went through the whole login process, enter the amount, description, the date. So yeah, it's not able to select a category from the list. So it's probably that's where it's ending up being stuck at. All right, so I think I figured out the issue. So if you go to the transaction before, if you go and select the expense or the type of transaction. You can see here that there's expense and income. Don't worry about the font for now. That's a separate issue, but you can see here that before it wasn't even loading categories at all. So right now, other income and salary is being loaded now. I had Claude Code generate some insert statements here for creating categories for this user that I have. So it's able to execute it against NeonDB. If I go to SQL editor, it's able to enter the categories. And then now, if I go back into that page, it's able to see the categories. So now we can actually go back and retest this. So let's go find. So this is the one that's failing. Let's go ahead and rerun this test again. Just gonna go ahead and just copy that. And then let's rerun test. So it should work now at this point, since that's kind of the missing field. The categories wasn't being populated when the modal form is being shown on the page to be able to actually create the transaction. So hopefully this last test that we have runs and successfully completes. So we're gonna go ahead and come back to it after it's completed. So the test hasn't completed yet, but if I refresh the transaction table, there's actually a data in there now. So it looks like it's actually working. We're just waiting for the result to come back for this test result. Make sure that's actually confirmed that this test has completed. So that means that we have successfully fixed this issue for this test, and then now it's currently passing. So let's just wait till it come back. But it's good news that it's able to create the transaction records now. There's budgets, there's categories, which we added earlier, which was the issue, which is why we can't create transactions. But now it's able to create a transaction for the specific user. We're just waiting for the test result to come back, and hopefully it's successful. So actually we finally was able to figure out the issue. So the issue was regarding the transaction amount. It's trying to convert this to fixed to 2, and we have to check to make sure that data is actually coming back as how it's intended, as opposed to the way it is. Basically, it's coming back as a decimal from the database, but we're trying to call the toFix directly on it. So now it properly handles both the number and the string types. So I noticed that issue when I was adding a transaction here and it wasn't loading transactions properly. So I figured it wasn't really about the transaction itself, but rather displaying the transaction that was causing the issue, and that was causing the test to fail. So once I figured that out, I was able to tell Claude to perform the actual fix, and then it was able to rerun the test again, and now it's successful. As you can see here, now all the passing tests, instead of what's before, now we have 6 total passing. So now we're able to create transaction as part of the app that we have. One thing that I want to bring up here is once you completed going through the test and actually have them all passing, you can just kind of go through it and just have them all running. And once you're happy with that test, you can actually deploy it into production or your staging environment. Next to the suite of tests that you ran, there's this icon right here where you can deploy the test. So it will open up and you can select which test to include. We have all these different tests. You can just go next to it and deploy the tests that you want and exclude the ones that you don't want. And then you can provide the URL for your staging or production environment, and you can just push. So once you have that, you have something that you can schedule routinely on a daily or every time you push something in your repository, where you can run this continuous integration in your specific environment. So once you're happy with that, you're pretty much kind of set. All right, so the cool thing about this is if something fails or there's a performance drops, TestSprite sends you alert right away. So you'll get a full historical tracking to spot the trends and track long-term stability. And of course, you can pause, tweak, or delete schedules anytime. The key here is to set up early and not wait until your code base is huge. So you want to create some tests frequently. And I know it's been a pretty long video so far, but I just want to show you the entire process of testing with this tool. It's not perfect by any means, and you still have to help it debug, but it will definitely help you build a stable app in the process. And once you generate that test, you can rerun it over and over again. It's basically rinse and repeat the process. And if you want to check out TestSprite, they have a free tier that will allow you to test them out and figure out if this is something that you can incorporate into your work or your project. So if you find this video helpful, please drop a like and subscribe, and to see more videos like this. And I hope to see you guys on the next one. Peace.